When I was 13, my dad had an affair and left my mom. He moved in with his affair partner, Janet, and my life was forever changed. At first, my sister and I visited him every weekend, and I'll admit he was a good dad during that time, even though I never liked Janet. However, everything shifted when Janet got pregnant and had their son. The visits became less frequent, and my dad grew more concerned with his new family. He started missing important events like my recitals and my sister's competitions because he was too busy with his son. When I was 16, Janet wanted to move for a new job opportunity. My sister and I begged our dad not to leave, but he simply said, "I need to prioritize my family." That was it. He moved 10 hours away, and I realized he had chosen his new family over us. That decision shattered our relationship. I decided to go no contact because it became painfully clear that I wasn't part of his definition of family anymore. My sister, however, stayed in contact with him, and he would try reaching out to me through her, asking me to visit. I always refused. Even when he came back to town to see my sister, I refused to talk to him. When he showed up at our house, I avoided him entirely. I didn't invite him to my high school or college graduations, and by now, at 33 years old, I've stayed firm in my decision to keep him out of my life. Despite this, he's tried contacting me over the years, sometimes through his family, including my half-siblings who say they want a relationship and insist he's a great dad. 3 months ago, he moved back to my hometown, and since then he has been relentless in his attempts to reconcile. He's contacted me multiple times and even tried talking to my fiancée. Janet messaged me, accusing me of breaking my dad's heart and calling me pathetic, even suggesting I need therapy. I replied bluntly, calling her a home-wrecking woman, and then blocked her. But the pressure didn't stop there. My mom, sister, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and even some friends have all been telling me to let him back into my life. It feels like everyone is ganging up on me, claiming my dad tried his best and I'm the one pushing him away. Even my fiancé Larry has started to say I'm in the wrong, and it's all getting to me. Things escalated when I sat down with Larry to explain how much this situation was hurting me. I reminded him of everything my dad put me through, but he didn't seem to understand. He admitted he'd been speaking to my dad, encouraged by his own father who is friends with mine, and said he believes I should reconcile. Larry told me my dad loves me, always has, and has tried his best to be a part of my life. He even accused me of being unreasonable and claimed I was partly to blame for the breakdown of our relationship. He said Janet wasn't as bad as I thought and that everyone else could see the truth except me. Larry's words felt like a betrayal. When I broke down crying and asked why he wouldn't support me, he called me heartless and said he couldn't stand by and watch me act like a witch. That was the last straw. I told him he shouldn't marry someone he sees that way, got up and walked out. Now I'm sitting in my car, overwhelmed and unable to stop crying as Larry keeps calling, but I can't bring myself to answer. This morning, I made the difficult decision to meet with my dad to try and make things clear. I asked my mom to arrange the meeting and to stay as a mediator. My goal was to ask my dad to back off and leave me alone. He arrived almost immediately and we had a long, emotional conversation. I told him how his actions, moving away, choosing Janet over us, missing major life events, and ultimately making me feel like I wasn't part of his family, had hurt me deeply. I brought up how Janet treated me terribly and shared some of the cruel things she said to me over the years. I reminded him that he withheld my college fund as a form of blackmail and then spent it on his new family. I explained how I've had to miss family events to avoid him, and how much I resent his constant attempts to insert himself into my life now, including talking to my fiancée behind my back. I told him I hate how he broke up our family with his affair and prioritized Janet and their children over me and my sister. He responded by insisting he loves me and always will, and that he's never going to stop trying to reconnect. He admitted he made mistakes but said he can't regret the past because it gave him Janet and their kids, who he loves dearly. He said his kids are innocent and don't deserve my hostility. He brought up how difficult I was as a child, accusing me of being rude to Janet, breaking her belongings and starting arguments that stressed her out, especially when she was pregnant and high risk. He justified reducing our visits, claiming it was for Janet's and their son's health. He defended moving away, saying it was necessary for Janet's career, and claimed he tried his best to stay in touch by calling daily and inviting us to spend holidays with him. Hearing him try to justify everything was painful and I still feel conflicted. I've spent so many years trying to move on from the hurt he caused, and now it feels like it's all being dragged back to the surface. I feel like I'm losing everything, my family, my fiancé, and my sense of stability. I don't know where to go from here. At the age of 13, my life was forever changed when my father had an affair and left my mother for another woman who I'll call Janet. At first, my sister and I visited him every weekend. To be fair, he was a good dad during those times, even though I never liked Janet. But when Janet became pregnant and had their son, everything shifted. Our visits grew less frequent, and his priorities shifted toward his new family. He began missing important milestones like my recitals and my sister's competitions because he was busy with his son. When I was 16, Janet got a job opportunity that required them to move 10 hours away. My sister and I begged him not to leave us. I even told him how much it would hurt, but he brushed it off, saying, "I need to prioritize my family." That was the moment I realized he didn't see us as part of his family anymore. The distance effectively ended our relationship. I decided to go no contact because it was clear he had chosen his new life over us. Over the years, my dad tried reaching out. He would call, ask me to visit, and even stop by the house whenever he came back to town to see my sister. But I refused to see or speak to him. I didn't invite him to my high school or college graduation, and I've maintained no contact with him to this day. Now, I'm 33 and my father has been relentless in his attempts to reconcile. He and Janet moved back to our hometown 3 months ago, and since then he's been trying to reinsert himself into my life. Messages from my half-siblings have flooded in, pleading with me to have a relationship with them, describing him as a great dad. Janet even went so far as to call me pathetic and suggested I get therapy. When I finally had enough and told her what I thought of her past actions, I blocked her. Everyone, my mom, sister, grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, even my fiancé Larry, has been pressuring me to let my father back in. They insist he did his best to stay in contact and that I'm the one pushing him away. But they don't understand the depth of the pain I've carried since he abandoned us. Things escalated recently. Larry, who knew my history with my dad and Janet, started pressuring me to reconcile. When I confronted him, he admitted he had spoken to my dad, encouraged by his own father, who is friends with mine. Larry told me my dad had shared his side of the story and painted himself as a heartbroken man who never stopped loving me. Larry even said I needed to take responsibility for my part in the breakdown of the relationship. When he called me a heartless witch for refusing to reconcile, I walked out in tears. Eventually, after everyone's insistence, I agreed to meet my dad for a mediated conversation. My mom stayed to ensure the discussion stayed civil. I confronted him with everything I'd been holding in for years. He abandoned us when we needed him the most. Janet was cruel to me, and I resented how he allowed her to dictate our time together. He withheld my college fund out of spite, then later tried to bribe me with it. His constant attempts to involve others in our issues only pushed me further away. He, in turn, defended his actions. He claimed he's always loved me and regretted how things turned out but couldn't undo the past. Janet was high risk during her pregnancy, and that's why he limited our visits. His son had health issues, and Janet suffered from postpartum depression, so he couldn't see us as often. He insisted that Janet and his kids were innocent in all this and deserved a chance to be part of my life. We came to an uneasy agreement. I would attend 3 therapy sessions with him, and he would respect my boundaries. He promised to stop involving Janet and his kids and to back off from my life. But it didn't last. Just 3 days later he broke our deal. He invited Janet, my grandparents, and his other kids to a dinner that was supposed to be just the 2 of us. When I saw them, I became upset, but he begged me to stay, claiming that accepting Janet and his family was the only way forward. Things spiraled. Heated words were exchanged, and Janet made hurtful comments about my appearance and mental health. My sister, seeing this unfold, stood up for me and even slapped Janet before helping me leave. After that disastrous encounter, I decided to cut him off for good. I blocked him, Janet, and even my grandparents who had sided with him. My mom and sister, who witnessed the chaos, now understand why I've kept my distance. My sister has even stopped letting him see her kids and blames him for destroying any chance of reconciliation. As for Larry, things are complicated. He admitted he had been manipulated by my dad and his family, who pressured him into siding with them. He confessed that my dad had secretly paid for parts of our wedding, which Larry's parents had falsely claimed to have funded. I felt betrayed, but Larry has apologized profusely, promising to go no contact with my dad and stand up to his own family. For now, I've moved out and am staying with my mom to think things over. We've postponed the wedding. Whether we'll work through this or end things entirely, I'm unsure. For now, I'm focusing on therapy, healing, and rebuilding trust with those who have truly stood by me.